What's up? So this is part two of the Truth Be Told vlog, the to be continued part of it. The Truth Be Told vlog, Forgive to Forget. You can check out the first one. Just look down the list on my YouTube page. But this is the second part to it. But as I was explaining, yeah, it's a vicious cycle, man. You have females that dog out males because of something that they might have gone through with a male or some particular dude that they was dating or something like that. And then you have guys that will dog out women because of something that they went through or something they weren't taught as being a man or something like that. So they end up dogging out a woman, and then she ends up dogging out a good man, and then a good man dogs out a good woman, and it's just over and over and over again, and it never stops. That the cycle just continues on and on and on and on, and everybody's end up hurt and nobody ends up healthy. So yeah, I missed that part when I was locked up. I didn't really see a lot of it. It was already going on before I got locked up. It was just something that's been going on, especially in the African American community. Unfortunately, we tend to see more of it, and I always wondered why. Why do we see more of that problem than other ethnic races? And I wouldn't even say that it's really more predominantly us. And I don't think that part matters. The part that matters the most is, why is that going on? So yeah, I was, when I came out of prison, I started to really see these things from a different light because now I was older, and being older, now I can understand things a little bit more. I can comprehend things a little bit more because I'm more educated and I have a little more knowledge and a little more information and data to go off of to analyze things a little bit more. My mind had kind of become more, my mind works a little bit better. It became more intelligent. So therefore, when these things happen, can't stand here. But therefore, when these things were going on in my life, now, when I was small, I couldn't comprehend it. I couldn't comprehend it a lot like I do now. And thank God I can comprehend things now a lot better than I could comprehend back then. So as I come out and I get to seeing these different things and I start dating myself, it really started to become apparent that I was a little bit slow to what was going on out here. And as a result of that, I made some mistakes in the one relationship that I had the most. The one long-term relationship that was longer than any relationship that I had ever had. I made a lot of mistakes. Some people would say that you didn't make a mistake. You were being good to her. How can that be a mistake? It's a mistake because I didn't analyze her properly before I decided to give her my all. I didn't analyze her properly. I didn't sit down and do the due process on trying to see if we really fit together. I didn't evaluate her situation at home with her parents. A guy told me once when I was in prison, he said, "Man, you want to know what a woman is going to be like in the next 10 years? You want to know what a woman's going to be like, how she's going to treat you when you get older?" I said, "What?" He said, "Look at her mom." I'm just telling you what he told me. I'm not saying that this is the correct way to analyze anything, especially about a woman, especially about a human being. But the funny thing is that I remembered that part somewhere down the line in my relationship with her, and I met her mom. I won't say her name here to protect the innocent. Rest in peace, but she's passed away right now. So therefore, I definitely will not say her name here. But she was a lot like her. Let's just put it like that. I don't want to slander her. I don't want to do anything that assassinate her character, especially now that she's not here to defend herself. I don't think that would be right. So I'm not going to do that. But what I will say is this, is that they were a lot alike. They were a lot alike. And if I had taken his advice, I think I probably might not have made what I call mistakes. Mistakes in judgment. Mistakes as in giving my all to someone who wasn't healthy enough mentally or emotionally, especially emotionally, spiritually, to be able to handle how I was. I'm the type of hold hands guy. I like to hold your hand, take you to the park, give you a kiss. I'm a PDA type of dude, public displays of affection. I like to hug people, especially when my main squeeze. I like to hug. I like to be touchy-feely, affectionate, compassionate, passionate. That's just the way I am. I'm a hopeless romantic. I used to watch The Wonder Years when I was younger. Shout out to his name, Ben Savage, and Winnie Cooper, Denicia McKellar. Yeah, I think everybody had a crush on her. But anyway, so yeah, being that I was that type of person, she wasn't really that type of individual, and because she wasn't that type of individual, she had been hurt before. Before I got out of prison, she was in a long-term relationship with an individual that was abusive. He was very abusive, and he was an alcoholic, and he was abusive to his children, and he wasn't there. He was an absentee dad. Because of that, she thought all men were like this. She had got played, what they call played, but she was kind of abused and disrespected by a lot of different men. And because of that, she had this mentality, or she had developed a mentality of, it's sort of like a survival against men type of deal. Okay, I deal with men, but I really don't like them. But I have this urge, because you're a woman and you're a female, she has this feminine urge or female urge, natural instinct to want to be around men. But she can't stand them because of things that people in her past, males in her past, had done to her. Walking into this situation, I, not knowing this, unknowingly, did a lot of things. I sort of, when a person is abusive to themselves, or they abuse drugs or something like that, or they're going through some type of addiction, right? She was addicted to abuse. Now, I know that that's kind of hard to understand. That phrase is sort of kind of hard to understand. Addicted to abuse means that you're the type of individual that you don't want to be abused, but you've been abused so much that you're used to it. So therefore, if someone treats you any way different, it's awkward for you. You don't understand it. You can't comprehend why someone would treat you differently, right? It's just like being abused with being addicted to drugs. When you're addicted to drugs, you're so used to this drug being in your system that when it's not in your system retaliates and your system rebels against you. It rejects being clean. It rejects sobriety, right? And even though sobriety is good for you, it still rejects it because it's used to this drug. And this abuse, this adrenaline building abuse that used to happen to her, she was used to that, and she wasn't used to someone treating her with respect, treating her with affection, being the type of individual that I was. I don't know. Maybe I should have cut and ran after that. A lot of people were telling me, man, don't mess with her, don't deal with her. And me growing up an African-American male, African-American females that I was around at the time used to always beat me over the head when I was young, when I was a child, and used to tell me, I guess they were trying to catch me when I was young, but they would always used to tell me, don't treat a woman bad, don't be abusive, don't put your hands on a woman, don't say anything, don't call her names, don't call her out of her name, don't disrespect her, RESPECT type of deal. I was a proponent of that, the sugar and spice, everything nice theory, right? The philosophy. My grandmother told me that. My mother even told me that. I actually watched my mother go through a lot of abusive relationships herself, and because I was her child and I was there in the house, I watched it and heard it, and it hurt me a lot. Hurt me quite a bit because I hated. I was too small to kind of do something about it, and then those were my mother's choices, and I couldn't stop her choices because I was too young to kind of be able to sit down with her and make her do anything, or sit down with her and influence her decisions. I was too young. I was a child. She was taking care of me. I wasn't taking care of her. So my hands were tied. Couldn't do nothing about it. So I watched these things. So therefore, I grew up kind of wanting to treat women with respect and being more nice to women and be more compassionate with women and more understanding with women and be the type of man that wouldn't abuse a woman, be the type of man that would take care of a woman and love a woman wholeheartedly from my heart. And after 12 years of prison, the world kept turning. And because the world kept turning, things got a little bit worse. I remember my grandmother I used to call my grandmother used to say, rest in peace, she used to say, things are getting out here worse, Andrew. They just getting bad out here. It's not the same as it was when you were here. So when you get out, you better grow some thick skin, because when you get out, these people here are just heartless. People are heartless. People that lost a lot of love. I used to read that in the Bible. There's a Bible verse. I don't know where it's at, but there's a Bible verse that said that as time goes on, the love of many will wax cold, which means that people will start losing their love. People will start losing emotion. People will start losing that tenderness that human beings are born with. And because of these cycles, these vicious cycles, and this war of the roses, and these war of the genders, and these war of the races, and war of cultures, these clashes that go on, people are losing their humanity. And she was telling me this while I was locked up in prison. And I was getting a little bit I was getting a little evidence of that, because there were guys that were coming in there that, in prison you don't have anything else to do but eat, sleep, lift weights, go to school if you can, and sit around, tell jokes and stories about what you used to do when you were out in the world. And these stories that I were hearing from these guys, these relationship stories, were colorful. I would just say colorful. Very interesting stories. Tragic. Straight out of Shakespeare's composition book. Tragic. But anyway, so yeah, I knew things were that bad, but I didn't think that I would experience it, because I thought that love conquered all. It's supposed to. Unfortunately, it couldn't conquer the situation between me and her. But I used to do things for her, man. I did a lot, and that's what I said. Like, out of all this stuff that I did for her, it just never worked out. I took care of her kids. She had kids before me, before I had any children. I took care of her kids. I bought them clothes, because when I first met them, they didn't look taken care of. Even their own father was accused of neglecting them. So they looked that way. They looked neglected. They probably would hate me for saying this, because it makes their dad and his race look bad. I don't care. The truth is the truth. That's what the name of this vlog series is called. It's called The Truth Be Told. And truth be told. Simple as that. You don't like it, don't look at it. But anyway, the truth is being told. When I met them, they looked neglected. They look abandoned. They looked like they weren't upkept. They wasn't kept at all. So me coming from the background of my grandmother was not the type of person that would like to see her grandchildren or children look bad. She went out and she spent her money. She didn't care how much they get on her nerves, or what type of what state that they were in as far as anger or anything like that. She didn't care about any of that. All she cared about was her children look nice. When she went out and looked nice, she required that you go out and look nice. I explained that in the last video. So that's where I got that from. So I took care of them. I bought them new clothes, sent them to a brand new school. We moved out of the situation, out of the city, against her mother's will, against her father's wishes. We moved out of the city. We moved into a brand new city that was quieter, less crime, in a Republican neighborhood. I hate to bring that political part in there, but I just want to make it sure that I said it was a Republican neighborhood. Less crime, less drug selling. It was just better for them. Better schooling. It was just better for them. And it was better for me, because I wanted to change anyway. I didn't want to get out of prison and go back to doing the same thing that I was doing before. The reason being is I think it's common sense. Nobody wants to be in prison the rest of their life. Nobody wants to live nobody wants to live below the poverty level the rest of their life. Nobody wants to sell drugs to their own kind the rest of their life. Nobody wants to be the cause of the destruction of their own race and members of their own race the rest of their life. So therefore I said, you know what, I need to change. I need to do something different. And this was the perfect time. And I see that I thought, okay, well, she needs something different as well. And the kids needed something different. This is perfect. This is the perfect situation. I thought, okay, by me taking the bull by the horn and saying, you know what, we're gonna pull each other up by the bootstraps, and we're gonna take this journey together. I remember having a conversation with her on the phone, and I told her, I said, listen, if I go somewhere successful and I become successful, you're going with me. There's no way in hell I'm gonna see you back here in the hood and I come up. That's just not the type of person that I am. That's dirty. That's just scandalous to do something like that. It's trifling, and I can't be that type of dude. The type of dude I am, if you're with me and I go to the top, you're going with me. Period, point blank. I don't care if you're not talented or nothing. Just do some paperwork or something, but you're going with me. And that's what I told her. I said, man, and when I go to the top, you're going with me. And we're going to take these kids. The main reason I used to look at these kids and I said, you know what? I see myself. And I see all of the deferred dreams that I had and the lost opportunities and whatnot. And my mother's inability or unwillingness sometimes to push forward and exercise our upward mobilities. Okay, let me say this a different way. I'm sounding like Porky Pig out here. But to exercise her willingness and her will to move forward and be successful in life. I hate to do that, but I have to say these things because my mother was not. The truth has to be told. My mother was not ambitious, and that's okay. That would be fine. You're not ambitious, but you can't be destructive at the same time. Not being ambitious is okay. I wouldn't say it's okay. For me, it's not okay. But I would say, it's acceptable if that's what you want to choose. You just can't be destructive. You don't want to be ambitious. That's fine, but don't be destructive. Don't destroy other people's opportunities and other people's choices just because you don't want to, because you don't have the motivation, right? Don't do that because you don't have it. Don't hold someone else back because you feel like you can't do it. So that was the main concern. That was the main situation with her. Was I got, let's go, let's do it. Let's make this move. So we made the move and all that. But once again, my inexperience with relationships ended up with me. I ended up in a bad situation because the children were raised a certain way. They were raised more liberal, and I'm a conservative person. And I grew up conservative with conservative values. And she raised her children more liberal, and she was more liberal herself. I didn't know this, and I only found this out. There's this old adage that you don't know a person until you live with them. I find that to be true. As cliche as it sounds, it's 100% the truth. You don't know somebody until you really live with them. You have to live with them because then you get to see the good, the black, the good, the bad, and the indifferent in any person. At least that's what I find, in my humble opinion. So when I got to living with her a couple of months into the situation, I saw the stark difference between the stark contrast between the way she lives and the way I live and the way her children was living. They weren't really respectful of me being a caretaker of them. And then there was situations where the in-laws, I would call them my in-laws. I was not married to her. We never got married. There was no ring on her. There was. We played like it. She had a little ring on her finger, but there was no official paperwork as far as marriage is concerned. There was no marriage. We were never husband and wife. We were just long-term relationships. But there was individuals in her family that were they wanted to be involved in the relationship more than they should have been, and it caused a lot of confusion. It caused a lot of strife and a lot of stress within the relationship. And I know people that have relationships or difficult relationships out there who have had difficult relationships out there relate to what I'm saying. Sometimes people on the outside reach into the inside of the relationship and they shouldn't be reaching into the relationship with someone else, and it caused a lot of damage. And that's what happened. It caused a lot of damage because there was too much influence from that end of her side of the relationship influencing her actions. So therefore, that's why things didn't work out. But that didn't mean I didn't do things for her. I did everything that a man is required to do because, like I said, there were black women in my life all my life that were beating me over the head, telling me that just because a woman has a past doesn't mean that you can't date her. Or just because a woman has children doesn't mean that you should shun her. Doesn't mean that you should shut her down or just kick her to the curb and ostracize her and outcast her just because she had children before you came along. How could you discriminate against a woman who has children before you came along? If you want to date her, then you have to accept her kids. And this was beat into my head by African American women all my life. So I said, you know what? That's why I dated her, and that's why I take on the responsibility. Unfortunately, there was no other side. There were no gentlemen that came into my life and told me, hey, listen, that might be, the right thing to do is to not discriminate on her. However, that does not mean you should not be circumspect about the situation. That doesn't mean you shouldn't evaluate and analyze whether you are a right fit for her and those children. There was nobody who told me that part. So, Because of that, I got caught up. But that doesn't mean that I didn't do my role. I didn't play my role as a male who was in love with a woman. And my part was to take care of her and buy her things and buy her children things. And she had a brand new washer and dryer that I bought, you know. Every time tax season came around, I made sure that most of it went to her or went to the house. We bought TVs, we bought all types of material stuff I don't want to get into. I could go on and on and on for days and days and days describing each and every item that I bought for her. But it still won't make any difference because it didn't make any difference then. So going through that list won't make any difference now. However, it's just me explaining my truth. And my truth is, even to this very day, is that I did the very best that I could in that relationship. And unfortunately, it just didn't work out the way that it should have worked out. So now I'm at a point in my life where I've been through, in this year alone, I've been to Warsaw, Indiana. I left Chicago and went to Warsaw, Indiana. I left Warsaw, Indiana and went to Columbus, Indiana. And through that, I lost my children. They used to be with me, but there's this legal statute that says that even though the kids were in my custody and had been in my custody for a whole year, 12 months, there's a statute that I couldn't take them out of the state without her permission, even though these are my children, genetically. So, because of a loophole in the law, I ended up losing them. But that doesn't mean that the journey didn't continue. It hurt very bad, but I had to continue the journey because there was something that I'm trying to get. There's a goal that I'm trying to reach, and I'm not going to let anybody stop me from reaching that goal. I wanted to be something different. I wasn't supposed to end up the person that I was prior to me leaving prison. Prior to me going to prison. Prior to me going to prison. My grandmother always had high hopes for me, but she also told me because of my mother, I didn't really stand a chance. My grandmother could have easily took me from my mother and took her to court for custody and claimed that she was neglectful and abusive. But she didn't want to do that. My grandmother said that she didn't want to do that. She didn't want to take me from my mom because my mom was always tripping, saying that if she did something like that, she was kind of hindering the relationship between her and I. She wasn't giving her a chance. And my grandmother listened to that because she didn't want to be guilty of taking away her chance to raise her own child. But she had me living in neighborhoods that I shouldn't have been in. Anyway, that's another video. Hopefully, no, it's not. No, it's not. Because this is a closure video. This video, I'm actually doing closure. This is for me to be able to close the situation out and say, you know what? It's over with. You know, that whole situation is over with. She didn't understand me. This is my ex I'm talking about. She didn't understand me because of what she went through in her life, and it caused problems. I didn't understand her, but I tried to understand her. Case in point, we went to counseling. There was this counselor that I used to work with at the job that I worked at the place of employment that I worked at. He was a secretary, or no, not secretary, but he was a supervisor of mine at the job. One day, him and I talked, found out that he was a marriage counselor. This is when I first actually got with my ex. And he said, you know what, come on by and sit down and talk with me with her because you want to marry her, okay? Come on by, I'm a marriage counselor, and we're going to do some premarital counseling, which I heard was helpful for any couple that is trying to get married. You know, you go through premarital counseling to kind of get over those parts that are not so smooth in the relationship, to kind of talk out those issues and those circumstances in the relationship before you actually get into the relationship, to prevent problems, to prevent issues, to prevent all of the things that I went through. Well, we went, and when I went with her, he got to talking to her about, you know, her children and how her children, that was one of the issues, is how her children related to me as being a caretaker. I never told those guys that I'm your dad. You're going to respect me as your dad, or I'm going to whoop your butt. Never said nothing like that. Never was that type of individual. I just said I have rules and have regulations. You're going to be in at a certain night. You're going to be in a certain time at night, because as being your legal guardian, not your father, but being your legal guardian, it is my responsibility for you if something happens to you when you're out there at all hours of the night. They're gonna come knocking on the door and they're gonna seek me out for prosecution, not just you.